I was holding the transfer envelope for Hayes Precision Industries when it happened. $2 billion. My life's work. Everything I had built over 4 decades in Oregon. All sealed inside a document I planned to hand to my son tonight. I had just finished running my hand over the leather-bound anniversary album I'd commissioned for Mark and Claire. The kind of gift a father gives when he believes he's passing the torch of a legacy. I looked straight at the camera in my mind, the way I always do when my instincts warn me. If you're new here, check if you're subscribed. And listen carefully. That week, my phone buzzed. A new email. The subject line froze me where I stood. Stop now. Read this. 8. Just 4 words. But it felt like someone had pressed a cold hand against the back of my neck. I opened it. One attachment. A PDF. Then another. And another. The first file slid open on my screen, and my breath stuttered. Preliminary Guardianship Assessment. Robert A. Hayes. It's redded. My name. My age. My company. A report claiming I was showing progressive cognitive decline. Okay. I hadn't authorized anything. I hadn't spoken to any doctor. Yet the signature line was already prepared. Waiting for a doctor I had never met. In the corner of the document, a note in small print. Proceed. Before he signs. And something inside me snapped quietly. Not rage, not fear. Something colder, something older. I tapped the second file. An email thread between Mark and a psychiatrist named Dr. Ellen Reeves. We need this evaluation done before he signs anything. Claire and I are ready to move forward immediately. As it, my son's words. Cool, efficient, the kind of tone he used in corporate meetings, not family conversations. I could feel the room tilt around me, but I kept reading. Dr. Reeves replied with a schedule. Fees. Confidentiality terms. As if my life had already been discussed, dissected, and filed away by people I trusted the most. The third file landed the hardest. A spreadsheet neatly laid out, color-coded by Claire. Real estate. Investments. Company valuation. Liquidation projections. And at the bottom, in her handwriting, $310 liquid after sale. Enough to clear everything. Tankster. Everything. I knew what she meant. Her failed development project in Phoenix. The debts she tried to hide. The cracks in their perfect marriage photos. Suddenly, it all made sense. And none of it made sense at all. Mark called me twice. Then, 3 times. I let the phone ring. I stared at the screen until the light hurt my eyes. I needed to get out of the house. Out of the memories. Out of the shadow of the family I thought I knew. I drove to the Riverfront Marriott in downtown Portland. I booked a room overlooking the Willamette River, and told the front desk I didn't want housekeeping, calls, or interruptions. When the door clicked shut behind me, the silence felt surgical. I laid the album on the table. Then, the transfer envelope. Then my phone. And for the first time in years, I let myself sit in stillness. When my wife died 8 years ago, I promised myself I'd never let Mark feel alone the way I had. I built the company with a kind of stubborn faith that someday he would carry it forward. I survived recessions, market collapses, sleepless years, and the slow grief of becoming a widower. All because I wanted him to inherit something strong. People think loneliness hits you suddenly when you're older. But the truth is, it creeps. It hides in corners. It waits until a moment like this, when betrayal touches your name, to show its full shape. I turned the lamp on low and opened my laptop. I printed every file. Page after page slid out of the printer like verdicts, and I placed each one carefully on the table. Guardianship fraud, financial mapping, email coordination. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. And then, my phone buzzed again. A second email. Same sender. Anonymous. Same subject style. Simple. You don't have much time. As it. This one had no attachments. Just a single line. He moved the evaluation earlier. You need an ally. It is never why. And beneath it, a phone number. I dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3. Then, someone picked up. a breath, nothing else. And the call disconnected. It was in that moment alone in a hotel room, filled with the paper trail of my own undoing, that I realized something. I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing my son. And if I didn't act soon, I'd lose everything else right behind him. Out the window. The river lights blurred in the night air. I pressed my palms against the desk, feeling the weight of 40 years of work, 40 years of trust, settling into my bones. I whispered to the empty room, "If they planned this in silence, I'll answer it in daylight." Even Fred, I didn't know it yet, but the path I chose next would lead to a vineyard full of witnesses, a screen full of evidence, and a son who would meet the truth in front of everyone he once tried to impress. And none of us would walk away unchanged. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on top of the hotel blankets, fully dressed, the documents spread across the desk like pieces of a crime I hadn't agreed to be part of. Every few minutes, I'd rise and walk to the window, watching the river drift in the dark. Portland looked peaceful from up here, but inside that room, everything I'd trusted was cracking open. Around 6 in the morning, I poured myself a coffee from the small machine on the counter. My hands shook not from age, but from the weight of what I'd seen. I rebuilt the sequence in my mind. The first, PDF. The second. The third. The handwriting I recognized instantly as Claire's. My son's cold, rehearsed tone in that email. A doctor I'd never met, signing away my competence. It didn't feel real. And yet, it felt inevitable. Maybe somewhere along the way, I had ignored signs, because I loved them too much to believe they were capable of this. I gathered the pages into folders, labeling each one with sticky notes from the hotel stationery. Then I sat with the note from the anonymous email. "You need an ally. Artie." The number written beneath stared back at me. I hesitated, then dialed. This time, someone answered immediately. A soft voice. Steady, but cautious. "Mr. Hayes?" There. The tone wasn't familiar, but there was something earnest in it. "Who is this?" Away. A pause. "My name is Mariah Bennett. I used to work under Dr. Reeves. I can't talk on the phone. Not for long. But I saw things. Things that match what you received." The connection wavered for a moment, as if she were hiding somewhere with poor reception. "They've been doing this for a while," she whispered. "Families with assets. Older patients, with no one watching closely. A TED." My pulse thudded. "What exactly did they do, Mariah?" 8. But before she answered, I heard a muffled shout in the background, someone calling her name. She inhaled sharply. "I'll message you an address. Meet me there tonight. 8 o'clock. And come alone. 1. Come alone. 1. And the line went dead. I set the phone down slowly, my mind spinning. If she was telling the truth, this conspiracy dwarfed my situation. And if she wasn't, I was walking into a stranger's hands, with everything to lose. Still, instinct told me she wasn't lying. Her voice trembled not with deceit, but with fear. As I thought about meeting her, another knock sounded in my memory, my son pounding on my door months earlier when he wanted help with a down payment. The desperate look in his eyes, Claire at the edge of my doorstep, smiling too brightly. All those little inconsistencies now stacked themselves into a single picture, sharp and cruel. I needed help, someone who understood law, documents, intent, someone who wouldn't judge me before hearing the truth. There was only one person who fit. Ethan Cole. He hadn't practiced law actively for years, but what he lacked in youth, he compensated with experience and a mind sharp enough to slice through concrete. He was also the man who comforted my wife in her last days at the cancer ward, sitting with us long past visiting hours. I trusted him in ways I couldn't fully articulate. When I called, he picked up on the second ring. "Robert, you're up early." "As Guy. I need to see you," I said, my voice low. "It's serious." And silence. "I'm in Seattle," he said. "But, for that tone, I can be in Portland by 2. He stayed. I remember sinking into the hotel chair, the relief hitting me like warm light. "Thank you," I whispered. "You don't thank me yet," he replied. "You bring everything, no matter how ugly." He arrived exactly on time, tan coat still wet from the Portland drizzle. I opened the door, and the moment he saw my face, his expression changed. "What happened?" I handed him the first folder. Then the second. Then the third. He read quietly. Occasionally, he exhaled slowly, the way he did in court when an opposing lawyer made a tactical error. But this wasn't a mistake. It was a blueprint. Finally, he set the papers down. "Robert, this is guardianship fraud." The words sat between us like a living thing. I nodded. "And because your son is involved, it's elder financial exploitation. Very serious. Very criminal." I leaned forward. "What do I do?" He rubbed his jaw, pacing the carpet. "You gather more evidence. Concrete. Irrefutable. You don't accuse them yet. And under no circumstances do you confront them. Privately. Private conversations can be twisted. Public exposure cannot." I closed my eyes, the phrase echoing, "Public exposure cannot." When I opened them again, Ethan had pulled out his leather notebook. "I'll help you," he said. "But you need more than these PDFs. You need proof beyond their denials. Motive. Financial strain. Recorded communication. Witnesses." I didn't have to respond, he already knew I was in. He made a list. Confirm Dr. Reeves' involvement. Verify Claire's debt trail. Gather financial projections showing motive. Identify a witness willing to come forward. Secure an alternative medical evaluation to prove competence. I stared at the list, each point heavy yet precise. "And this person who emailed you," he added, tapping the first page. "They might be your key witness." As if summoned, my phone buzzed with a new message. An address, a time. 8 p.m., signed only with M. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Mariah?" I nodded. He hesitated. "You should go. But stay alert. This could expose everything. Or it could be a trap." The meeting location was an employee lot behind St. Anne's Hospital, fluorescent lights flickering above rows of parked cars. Mariah stood beside a silver sedan, her scrubs hidden under a gray hoodie. She looked younger than I expected, but her eyes held the weight of someone who had seen more than she should have. "You came," she said. "I'm out of choices," I replied. She opened a small bag and pulled out a flash drive. "This is everything I copied before I quit. Emails, internal memos, video footage. There's enough to show a pattern." My stomach tightened. "A pattern of what?" She swallowed. "Declaring competent people incompetent. For money. Mostly older men with assets. Claire has been working with Dr. Reeves longer than Mark knows." Her voice trembled. "She's not just desperate. She's strategic." A gust of cold wind rushed through the lot. I felt it. That shift in the air before a storm has fully arrived. Just as I reached for the flash drive, headlights swept across the parking lot. Mariah jumped. "That's them. They can't see me with you. Take it. And go." Before I could ask who them was, she slipped between two cars and vanished into the dark. I slid the drive into my coat pocket and hurried back to mine. As I pulled out of the lot, I caught one last glimpse in the rearview mirror. Mark's SUV turning into the entrance. My son was close. Too close. And he had no idea the truth was already slipping through his fingers. By the time I left that hospital lot, the night had folded into a kind of trembling quiet. My hands stayed tight on the steering wheel the whole drive back to the hotel, the flash drive burning like a live coal in my coat pocket. I didn't dare look at it yet. Not until I locked my door, drew the curtains, and turned on only the desk lamp. Something about standing in that dim glow reminded me of all the nights I used to work through contracts after Mark fell asleep. Nights when I believed I was shaping a future for him, not one I'd have to defend from him. The flash drive clicked softly as I slid it into my laptop. A folder opened. Dozens of subfolders. Dozens of timestamps. My name in several. The first file I opened was an email chain. Not the clipped version from the anonymous Gmail, this was the full thread. A line from Dr. Reeves caught my eye immediately. Once the evaluation is complete, we can proceed with the recommendation of guardianship. Claire has prepared financial summaries. I'll add clinical language to support the narrative. This Claire has prepared for Mother C. Support the narrative. Clinical language for a story I never wrote. The next file was a hallway recording. A grainy angle from a security camera. The audio was low, but the body language was clear. Claire, handing something an envelope. Thick, white, to Dr. Reeves. The doctor didn't even hesitate. She tucked it into her coat like she'd done it before. In the corner of the footage, the timestamp blinked back at me. 2 weeks ago. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of everything settling across my shoulders, and for a moment, I let myself feel it. Not just betrayal, but the grief beneath it. The kind of grief that comes not from being hurt, but from realizing the people you raised have learned to calculate your worth in numbers instead of memories. I closed the files and exhaled slowly. Tomorrow, I would see Mark and Claire, and I needed to act. The next morning, I drove to their house in Lake Oswego with a box of pastries like nothing was wrong. They opened the door with warm smiles, the kind people wear for neighbors and business partners. I stepped into their kitchen, letting the familiar smell of coffee and cinnamon greet me. "Dad, we were worried," Mark said, patting my shoulder. "Did you get home late last night?" We called. "I must have been tired," I said lightly. "Didn't hear a thing." A small lie. A necessary one. Claire poured coffee, her movements practiced. She always carried herself like someone hosting a magazine shoot. "You look pale, Robert. Are you taking your supplements?" Free and a gentle tone. Concerned. Too rehearsed. I watched her place the mug on the table, and for a moment, I imagined her writing that line about liquidating my company. Her handwriting had always been neat. I used to admire it. Now it made my stomach tighten. We ate in soft conversation until Mark guided the discussion where he wanted it. "Dad." "About the Harrison contract." I sipped my coffee. "What about it?" "Well." He exchanged a quick glance with Claire. "You accepted terms that weren't in our favor. We're concerned you're taking on too much." Forgetting details. He said the words slowly, as if testing the ground under his feet. I looked at him with a practiced confusion. Did I? Maybe I'm more tired than I thought. Maybe I'm more tired than I thought. Mark nodded with solemn understanding, the way a doctor might acknowledge a terminal diagnosis. "That's why we think you should consider a power of attorney. Just in case." "Nothing urgent," Claire added softly. "It's just to protect you." My chest tightened, but I didn't let it show. I let my hand shake slightly as I set the mug down. "I'll think about it," I said. "My head hasn't been clear lately." Claire's eyes lit up just for a second before she masked it. She believed I was falling into their plan. That tiny spark was enough to confirm everything Mariah had told me. While she went to refill the coffee, something slipped from her purse. A sticky note. I saw the corner of it under the strap. "Evaluation. Sunday, 2 p.m. I stared at it for a heartbeat too long. When Claire returned to the table, she nudged the purse more tightly against her side. Mark kept talking, but his voice felt distant. Because something had shifted. A timeline. A move. An acceleration. If they were moving the evaluation earlier, then someone had warned them. Or they were getting nervous. Either way, it meant I didn't have as much time as I hoped. I left their house around noon. I walked down the driveway slowly, giving myself time to breathe. I unlocked my car, sat inside, and waited until my pulse steadied. And that's when a soft knock tapped against my window. It was Sandra, my neighbor. She leaned down slightly, her face framed by her gray curls and the faint worry lines of someone who still believed families shouldn't hurt each other. "Robert, I didn't want to get involved," she said gently. "But I saw something last week." My heart stilled. She continued. "Claire was meeting a woman outside your gate. A doctor, I think." She handed her a folder and whispered something like, "He won't see it coming." I didn't understand it then. I swallowed hard. Why tell me now? Her expression softened. Because you look like a man carrying too much alone. Her words hit deeper than she knew. I thanked her quietly and drove away. Every piece of the puzzle was falling into place. Not cleanly, not kindly, but clearly. By late afternoon, I returned to the hotel with 2 truths that held the weight of anchors. Mark believed I was slipping. Claire was leading the charge. I laid the new evidence on the desk beside Mariah's files. The picture was complete enough to be undeniable, yet fragile enough that if I made one wrong move, one accusation behind closed doors, they could flip the story in seconds. I needed to let them keep believing their plan was working, and I needed to choose the moment, the place, and the witnesses, where the truth would land, with the force of something irreversible. The anniversary celebration was 3 days away. A vineyard, 60 guests, a projector for their slideshow, a perfect stage. I leaned back in the chair and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. If there was ever a moment to end this cleanly, publicly, permanently, it would be there. It had to be there. The morning of the anniversary felt strangely calm. The kind of calm that settles over a place right before a storm breaks. I dressed slowly, choosing a navy suit my wife always liked, smoothing the lapels the way she used to before our company banquets. I paused once, letting my hand rest over my heart, steadying myself. I wasn't going to this celebration as a father anymore. I was going as a witness, and as the man they thought they could quietly erase. The vineyard stretched across rolling hills north of Willamette Valley, rows of green turning gold in the afternoon sun. Cars lined the gravel drive. Laughter floated from the patio. Everything looked beautiful from the outside. Perfect decor, perfect lighting, perfect guests. A celebration staged for admiration. A place where no one expected truth to arrive uninvited. Mark greeted me first, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "Dad, you're early." "Good. We need to test the projector." ADIs. His hand rested lightly on my shoulder. The gesture, friendly, almost protective. I felt the faintest tremor under his palm, a small betrayal his voice didn't reveal. Claire joined us, radiant in a pale dress. "Robert, you look wonderful. We were worried you'd forgotten today." End quote. I let my lips curl into a soft smile. "Not today," I said. "I've been looking forward to it." They led me to the reception hall, where a large projector screen stood against the far wall. A laptop sat on a high table, ready to display their 10-year montage. Photos of their wedding filled the first slide, waiting to be revealed. "We planned to show this before dinner," Mark said. "And we thought maybe you could say a few words too." Perfect. I walked up to the laptop, testing the HDMI cable as their guests filtered into the room. Conversations drifted around me, small talk, compliments, clinking glasses, the kind of noise that gives people the illusion that life is in perfect order. But underneath it all, my heart beat with a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not anticipation, something deeper. The quiet certainty that justice, real justice, never announces itself. It simply arrives. As the classical music softened and the lights dimmed, Mark tapped his glass. A hush fell over the guests. "Thank you all for being here," he said warmly. 10 years of marriage is something we're proud of, and none of it would have been possible without the support of family. Claire took the microphone, her voice gentle but bright. "Robert, thank you for everything you've done. Your guidance, your generosity. It means the world to us." "Well, people murmured in agreement, smiling at me. If only they knew. Mark gestured toward the projector. "Before dinner, we'd like to show a short presentation. And after that, Dad has something special he wants to share." I stepped forward as planned, my breath steady, my fingers finding the cold edge of my laptop. "Thank you," I said quietly. "If you don't mind, I'd like to go first." And Mark blinked. Surprised, but accommodating. "Of course, go ahead." End quote. I clicked. The screen lit up, but not with their wedding photos. A document appeared instead. White background, Legal letterhead. Preliminary guardianship assessment. Robert A. Hayes. I'm. A ripple of confusion passed through the room. People leaned forward. A. Provisioned. The first whispers began. I spoke into the silence. This was prepared without my knowledge, without my consent, and it was scheduled to be filed this Monday. Tell of one. Claire's champagne glass slipped slightly in her hand, catching a glint of light. Mark's smile faltered. Dad. What is this? He asked, voice tightening. I clicked again. The second slide filled the screen. Emails. Names. Dates. A message from Mark to Dr. Reeves. We need this done before he signs anything. Out of episode. The room froze. Someone in the crowd gasped. Someone else muttered, "Oh my God." Mark stepped forward, hands raised. Dad. This is taken out of context. But I lifted my hand lightly, stopping him with a gesture I hadn't used since he was a boy. Let me finish. Well, I clicked again. The hallway footage appeared. Claire passing the envelope. Dr. Reeves sliding it into her coat without hesitation. The timestamp in the corner blinking like a heartbeat. Claire's face drained of color. That's not what it looks like. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. It's exactly what it looks like. His crease today. Another click. Spreadsheet screenshots. Projections. Liquidation notes. And the handwritten line from Claire. 300 OTM liquid after sale. People began shifting uncomfortably. A cousin of Claire's covered her mouth. A business colleague of Mark's shook his head, stepping back as if distance could protect him from implication. I breathed in slowly. For months, they planned to declare me incompetent, to seize my company, to erase my signature before I could use it. And Eveline. Mark's voice cracked. Dad. Please. Let's talk about this privately. No, I said softly. Privately is how predators operate. Publicly is how truth survives. Unquote. Ethan stepped from the crowd, then gray coat, steady expression holding a folder of corroborated documents. He didn't speak. He simply handed them to the nearest guest, and the circle widened. The truth kept spreading. Claire broke first. You weren't supposed to see any of that. She burst out. We were drowning. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. Mark shook his head, eyes glassy. I didn't know about the forged signature, he whispered. Claire told me it was just paperwork. Just precaution. The room was still enough to hear every breath. Then, the door opened. 2 sheriff's deputies stepped inside, hats in hand, voices low and respectful. Mr. Hayes, we received your counsel's report. We need to speak with your daughter-in-law regarding financial misrepresentation. Ezo. A sound escaped Claire, a sharp inhale before she steadied herself, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. Guests stepped aside. No one defended her. Not one. Mark turned to me, something hollow in his gaze. Dad, please. Don't let them. But the sentence broke before it finished. And as they led Claire away, her heels clicking softly against the wooden floor, I felt the room shift. All the weight I had carried alone was finally landing where it belonged. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt finished. And that was enough. The vineyard emptied slowly after the deputies left. Conversations that once floated effortlessly through the hall now broke apart into uneasy fragments. People avoided each other's eyes. Some stayed silent, clutching their glasses. Others whispered in corners, trying to process what they'd just seen. But I barely registered any of it. I stood there as though time had loosened its grip, letting everything move except me. When the last of the guests stepped outside, the room fell quiet. Not peaceful, just empty. The string lights above flickered gently, casting long shadows across the floor where pieces of my family had shattered only minutes earlier. Mark remained near the projector table, shoulders bent, face pale. He wasn't crying, he never cried, but something in the way he stared at the carpet told me he was somewhere far beyond tears. I walked to him slowly. He didn't look up. Dad. I didn't know she forged it, he said, voice small, almost boyish. I swear I didn't know. End quote. His words drifted into the air like smoke. Too thin to hold. Too late to matter. Maybe there had been a time when I would have reached for his shoulder. Maybe I would have told him we could fix it. But that version of me, the one who believed trust was unbreakable, had died long before tonight. I just hadn't realized it. He finally lifted his eyes to meet mine. I never meant for it to go this far, he whispered. I held his gaze. That's the thing about harm, I said softly. It always goes farther than you intend. If you are Doe, he shut his eyes like the words struck him, and for a moment, I felt the familiar ache of wanting to protect him, the instinct that lives in every parent long after the child grows older. But justice has a shape too, and sometimes its shape is distance. I have to face the sheriff tomorrow, he murmured. You do, I replied. He swallowed hard. And, after that, is there any chance we'll talk? I know. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because honesty mattered more than comfort now. He nodded, almost accepting it, before walking out through the open doors into the chilly Oregon night. The hall felt even larger once he disappeared. I drove home with the windows cracked open enough for the night air to settle my thoughts. The road stretched ahead, quiet, winding past pine trees and still pockets of farmland. When I pulled into my driveway, the porch light flickered on. I hadn't noticed how tired my body was until I stepped out of the car. The ground felt unsteady. My own house felt unfamiliar. Inside, I hung my coat on the hook by the stairs and reached for a glass of water instead of the whiskey I used to rely on. Tonight wasn't about dulling anything. Tonight was about clarity. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Mark once did school projects, where Claire used to brag about her real estate wins, where birthdays and holidays lived like quiet ghosts. I let the memories pass through me, not resisting them, just letting them drift the way old photographs fade in sunlight. After a long while, I opened the top drawer and took out a leather notebook I'd kept since my wife passed. It held pieces of my life plans, private thoughts, sketches of ideas for the company, and letters I never sent. I turned to a blank page. At the top, I wrote a name, Lily. My granddaughter. The pen felt heavier than it should have. I began the letter the way I wished someone had written to me when I was young. One day, when you're old enough, you'll have questions about what happened. I don't expect you to choose sides. I only hope you choose truth. And I hope you know that everything I did, every decision I made, was to protect what's fair, not what's easy. The words flowed slowly, each one settling into its place. I told her about resilience, about mistakes, about legacies that aren't measured in money, but in the courage to stand for something even when it costs you. I told her she deserved a foundation, untouched by deceit, which is why I'd placed her inheritance in a trust no one could misuse. By the time I finished, dawn had begun pushing against the edge of the windows. A pale blue light seeped across the kitchen walls. I felt something loosen inside me. Not relief, not peace, but a quiet kind of steadiness. A new beginning shaped by truth rather than illusion. A week later, I met with Ethan in his Seattle office. He handed me the final papers confirming the revised succession plan for Hayes Precision, now set to transition to a trusted leadership team of engineers and managers who had been with me since the early days. People who had earned it with dedication, not taken shortcuts to steal it. He leaned back in his chair. You've protected everything, he said. Your company, your legacy, yourself. I nodded. But I didn't save my family, I replied. Ethan's voice softened. Sometimes protecting the truth is the only love a family has left. I looked out the window at the gray Seattle sky, at the cranes lifting new steel into place. It reminded me of the early years, how creation always came with discomfort, with noise, with breaking apart old pieces to build new ones. Maybe families weren't so different. In the evenings now, I walk along the river trail behind my house. I watch parents push strollers, couples share coffees, dogs tug their leashes as if life is too urgent to stay still. Sometimes I catch myself wondering where Mark and Claire are now, whether he blames me, whether she regrets anything, whether Lily will ever understand the fracture that cut through our lives. But then I remember something the nurse, Mariah, said during our brief meeting. Truth doesn't fix everything, but lies fix nothing. She was right. Justice isn't loud. It doesn't celebrate. It doesn't heal all wounds. It simply stands quiet, unshakable, and waits for us to meet it. Tonight, after everything that has unfolded, I'm left with a question that won't let me sleep. If you were in my place, would you forgive them? Tell me. Would you forgive them? Or would you choose justice? Subscribe for the next true Canadian family story. And tell me the city you're listening from.